This is Pacifica Radio's Letters and Politics. On today's final show, I will spend the time reflecting on the almost 16-year run of this program, as well as on so many fascinating events that I've seen through my time through this historic radio network, Pacifica Radio. I'll also tell you a few stories, and I hope to give you a proper goodbye. That's next on Letters and Politics. But first, the news.
I'm Kennedy Cuello with these KPFA news headlines. For the 10th time, Senate Democrats are rejecting a stopgap spending bill that would reopen the government. They are insisting they won't back away from demands that Congress take up healthcare benefits. The ongoing federal government shutdown, now entering its third week, centers on a partisan standoff over Affordable Care Act tax credits. Democrats want the subsidies extended as part of any funding deal, while Republicans insist they'll only negotiate once the government is reopened. With open enrollment for ACA plans beginning November 1st, millions of Americans face growing uncertainty. More than 24 million people currently rely on ACA coverage, including farmers, small business owners, and the self-employed. North Bay Representative Jared Huffman shared this update from the steps of the Capitol.
Premium increase notices have already gone out in my district to 37,000 households. And then we heard from a farming family, a woman in Iowa. And you know what? Unless you're part of some huge corporate mega farm, you're probably one of the many farmers, a majority of farmers in farm country, that depend on the Affordable Care Act for health coverage. Republicans are going to take our country off a health care cliff. We are here to reopen the government on terms that save your health care and end those cuts. Stay tuned.
If the enhanced premium tax credits expire this year, average annual premiums could rise by 114%, roughly $1,000 per person, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have been furloughed or are working without pay, facing mounting financial strain. They are now confronting a new uncertainty with the Trump administration's threatened layoffs. KPFA's Anthony Perazzo has more.
Little progress has been made to end the federal government shutdown as it enters its third week, with Republicans and Democrats digging in. The Republican White House has threatened the federal workforce with layoffs as leverage to pressure Democrats. Labor unions have fought back with lawsuits to block the layoffs. Frustration among workers is growing as the shutdown drags on. Democrats are concerned about health insurance subsidies expiring at the end of the year and have made the issue central to the shutdown fight. A federal judge on Wednesday temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's administration from firing workers during the government shutdown. For KPFA News, I'm Anthony Perazzo.
Over 30,000 unionized nurses and healthcare professionals are continuing day 3 of a 5-day strike at Kaiser Permanente facilities across California and Hawaii, demanding safe staffing and fair pay. KPFA news reporter Caitlin Clift joined medical professionals on the picket line Tuesday.
I'm Jeff Cathcart. I'm a certified registered nurse anesthetist at Kaiser San Francisco, and I've been with the organization for 20 years. We're out here striking today because over the last 2 years, we've lost over 115 CRNAs, a quarter of our workforce. We're only about 400 CRNAs in total to our competitors across the region. Ultimately, that's led to a recruitment and retention problem among nurse anesthetists, which ultimately leads to access of care issues for our patients, and that's really ultimately why we're out here today.
Union leaders say the walkout marks one of the largest healthcare strikes in U.S. history, as workers call for staffing standards that protect patient safety and dignity. A federal judge has extended a restraining order preventing the deployment of National Guard troops to Portland for another 2 weeks. Since June, the Trump administration has been federalizing and deploying National Guard troops to Democratic-led cities, including Los Angeles and Chicago. Operation Inflation is continuing outside Portland's Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility, where demonstrators have turned inflatable costumes into a form of protest art. Dozens of activists, many dressed as frogs, dinosaurs, and other characters, are gathering daily outside the South Portland ICE office. The trend gained traction after federal agents pepper sprayed a protester in an inflatable frog costume, an incident that's only fueled more participation. Speaking from the White House Wednesday, Donald Trump announced he wants to include San Francisco in the next round of federal law enforcement deployments to U.S. cities.
But these are great cities that can be fixed. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco. I think we can make San Francisco, there's one of our great cities 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now it's a mess. And we have great support in San Francisco, so I'd like to recommend that for inclusion, maybe in your next group. You'll get great support.
Local officials moved quickly to debunk Trump's claim that he has support from San Francisco leaders. Mayor Daniel Lurie and State Senator Scott Wiener both rejected the proposal, saying the city neither needs nor wants what Wiener called Trump's private army on our streets. The Supreme Court is considering a case that could gut what remains of the Voting Rights Act, changing the face of the upcoming midterm congressional elections. KPFA's Christopher Martinez reports.
The 1965 Voting Rights Act is considered a linchpin of the civil rights movement, but now the centerpiece of that law, called Section 2, is coming into question at the Supreme Court. The case was argued Wednesday in a 2.5-hour-long hearing. Justice Brett Kavanaugh seemed to reflect the opinions of the court's conservative majority.
Race-based remedies are permissible for a period of time, sometimes for a long period of time, decades in some cases, but that they should not be indefinite and should have an endpoint.
The Supreme Court is expected to rule by the summer, but court watchers are widely expecting that ruling will not favor the Voting Rights Act as it stands today. Reporting for Pacifica Radio News KPFA, I'm Christopher Martinez.
For KPFA News, I'm Kennedy Cuello. More news at noon.
Good day and welcome to Letters and Politics. I'm Mitch Jeserich. Well, friends, after almost 16 years of hosting this radio program, today is my final day. As I have said previously, I am not being pushed out and I am not disgruntled. Sometimes you have to say these things because people get suspicious. And while I am ending my employment at my home station KPFA in Berkeley, I'm not leaving altogether. This is my community. You are my community, and I'll still be around for special broadcasts and projects and maybe even for some readings. I was meditating under a tree yesterday. Brace yourself, you're about to get an old man Jeserich parable. And I've been meditating in recent years, and I usually sit beneath a tree to meditate, and I always put my attention towards a leaf that has fallen and is just lying there on the ground underneath the tree. While concentrating yesterday on this leaf, a brown leaf, for it is that time of year, another leaf just like it gently fell to its side. And I just thought how that entire leaf's existence just dramatically changed forever. For that leaf that just fell, it was a big deal. It had spent its entire existence connected to the tree. And then its grip weakened and weakened. And there it was just before at the precipice. The precipice before it would fall and then be changed and transformed forever. You know that feeling, right before you take the leap. I am being anthropomorphic here by giving this leaf human-like qualities, but that's what we humans do. And there was this freshly fallen leaf on the ground and in its new reality. And while I was looking at this newly transformed leaf, pondering it, my visual view widened, and I realized it was surrounded by hundreds of similar leaves that have also recently fell. For, again, we are in the season of falling leaves. And as I was focusing on this leaf's journey, I remembered that this is happening for billions of leaves all over the world and has happened for trillion and trillion more leaves throughout time. Because this is the way of the world. This is how the universe goes. And we all go through many transformations in our life, including ultimately death, which is perhaps the last leaf falling. Perhaps not. I don't know. I'm not dying, by the way, at least not as far as I know. It is scary to fall from a tree that you've been hanging on to for so long. I'm fearful about leaving KPFA and jumping into the unknown. But as the leaf knows when to fall, or is it the tree that knows when to let it go? I don't know. But I do know it's the season for my time to go. It is very possible that I am crazy for doing it, though. I do think of one of my favorite stories, Don Quixote of La Mancha, a foundational text to Spanish literature. Its author, Miguel Cervantes, is to Spanish that Shakespeare is to English. And interestingly, they both died on the same day. Don Quixote was an old man who read too many books about chivalry, and he became delusional. And he believed that he had become a knight-errant, and he went on wild quests to slay windmills that he thought were monsters. I do wonder through this very radio program if I too have become delusional. I have become so enchanted with stories and the telling of stories, I'm now on my own wild quest to tell my own stories. Thinking of Don Quixote, I have this ridiculous image in my mind that I am the disabled Don Quixote, that my reacher is my sword, a portable urinal, my shield, and my wheelchair, the horse, Rocinante. I don't know what my future endeavors will look like. I'm not leaving for another job. And I don't know what the future projects will look like either. I've never been one who can work on multiple projects at a time. I am too lazy. Idleness is my preferred state of being. But if you want to stay in touch, we can. You can email me still. My KPFA email should remain operational. I'll still be a part of the community. You can also find me on social media. And I do have a podcast, because everybody has a podcast, right? It's called Letters from Mitch. I name it that because that's exactly what it is, a letter from me to you. It is a place that will, and kind of already is, a platform for storytelling. The last episode was about a Buddhist ghost story. You can find Letters from Mitch on most of the podcast platforms. I also post it on Substack, where, yes, there is a Mitch Jeserich Substack page. There I put the audio of Letters from Mitch, and I provide a transcript along with some photographs and a little bit of art. Just look for Mitch Jeserich on Substack. Again, because no one ever gets it right, my last name is spelled Jeserich. Letters from Mitch does sound ostentatious to me, but I couldn't think of a more accurate title. You will also know that the word letters has always been important to me as a title. This very radio program began as a pilot project called Letters from Washington. It is when I went to Washington, D.C. to cover the first 100 days of the new Obama presidency. When I was working on the project, something happened that I've never experienced before and really never have since, except maybe in a minor way, what has happened since I announced that I'm stepping down from this program. During this pilot project, I would begin each show by saying that today is day 8 of the first 100 days of the new presidency, or day 25, or day 50, on and on and on. And as the number started getting up there and closer to 100, maybe around 80, we started getting a lot of emails from listeners asking us to keep the program going after the 100 days. And these emails were going to the KPFA manager, Lemlem Regio, as well, not just to me. I was getting them too, but so is she. And the emails just kept coming in. And they would increase in the intensity of volume of emails coming in the closer we got to that 100th day. Now, this was not organized. I or no one else was behind some campaign to get people to start sending emails to the station asking that the show be extended. It just happened on its own. And to me, it was amazing. And trust me, it's not something that happens to me often, and maybe has never happened before or after. So Lemlem Regio made the decision to turn Letters from Washington into an everyday program. There was some controversy around it at the time because there always is when something new comes to the station. There are only so many hours of radio available. It's not an infinite platform like maybe online media seems to be. We are confined by 7 days and 24 hours within a day. So to create an hour for Letters from Washington meant someone had to lose an hour. And that was Music of the World, a wonderful program, still heard on the weekends, that truly gives you a taste of what music sounds like from around the world. It's like a university class, but on the radio. And understandably, they weren't happy about it. They weren't happy about losing an hour because no one ever is. And yet, they handled it with dignity and grace, and I'm forever thankful to those folks who worked on the show for that. So thank you. Letters from Washington was born during a really difficult time at this radio station when we were basically in our own little civil war. It wasn't quite the fight of 1999 for Pacifica, but at my home station KPFA, I think this was like right around 2008 to 2010, it was our own little civil war, and it was ugly. It was also a time in which our revenue as a station was in decline. And whenever that happens, people fight for and over what's left. That's usually what happens when there's conflict. It was painful because people who were friends found themselves on opposite sides. And I know for myself, I behaved in ways that I would later regret. Lemlem Regio was in an impossible position as manager at the time, and she took a lot of blame for having to make decisions to respond to circumstances that weren't necessarily in her control. And she was treated really poorly for it. She was maligned for it. I always liked her, and I still do. She created this program, and I am eternally thankful to her for it. If you have been following this show long enough, you know the title, Letters from Washington, became Letters to Washington from Washington to Washington, because I was only in Washington, D.C. for a short period of time when this began, and once I was back in Berkeley, I didn't think it was appropriate to use the title Letters from Washington, considering I was in the Bay Area. But I never really felt comfortable with Letters to Washington. It sounded too advocacy-based for me, which I know is something that's actually quite normal to hear on these radio waves, and I respect that, but I am not an activist. I will talk to activists. I'll give them time. I'll explore their ideas with them. I want to hear them. But I've never actually seen myself as one of them. I mean, we're all activists in time, right? At certain times, but really, I am a trained journalist. And so then I changed the name again to Letters and Politics, and I have always liked that name. But how did I come up with Letters and Politics, you ask? Well, even if you don't ask, I'm going to tell you. I was an admirer of the great BBC broadcaster, Alistair Cooke. You will remember him for his role on PBS when he used to introduce Masterpiece Theatre. He was the old English guy that eloquently explained what you were about to see. Well, in Great Britain, he was wildly popular, not for Masterpiece Theatre, though maybe in some ways he was, but for his audio essays that he provided to the BBC that he did from the United States, and it was called Letters from America. And I have always been enamored with that. I think at some point I saw a PBS documentary about him, and to me it was just so romantic, and it was something I wanted to emulate. And so I knew I wanted to use the word letters in a title. And in fact, the title of the show was a straight ripoff of Letters from America, because I called it Letters from Washington. Every artist is a thief, my friend. Though we could argue whether or not I am an artist. Politics, the second part of the name, came a little later. Also influenced by Washington, D.C., where I spent a number of years previously. I always liked the name of this well-known bookstore, Politics and Prose. Again, there's just a romanticism that I liked in it. And so when it came to create a new name for this program, eventually I just put, and I knew I couldn't just call the show Politics and Prose, because again, every artist is a thief, but if you make it look exactly as it was, or what you're ripping off, what you're stealing, if it's the exact duplicate, well, now you are just obviously stealing, right? You're ripping someone off. So I just put politics and letters together. And there I had it. Letters and Politics. That, along with the theme music, is probably the best decisions I've ever made for this show. Oh, and I know you want to know what the theme music is. It's the most asked question I've received over these almost 16 years. Well, I'll tell you. It is Fat Mama by Herbie Hancock. When I was in college, I had the album, and I knew then, long before I ever got involved in radio, that it was going to be my song for something. And it was. I don't know how he feels about that, but it was. I am inflicted with this curse of always finding or giving meaning to almost everything. And it might sound great, but not when you're always deep in it. I think it's better to keep things simple if you can, and just see things as they are. As you could probably tell by now, I'm spending this hour of the show, the last show, just talking to you. I couldn't think of a proper segment to end it with. So instead, I've decided to just get reflective with you You'll have to suffer with it, but we just have another, 35 minutes. But, when one leaves a job after almost 20 years, because I was at KPFA long before letters actually began, one does tend to remember things as one leaves. In fact, if I was being interviewed right now, which I am not, I imagine an interviewer would ask me, what are some of my most memorable moments being at the station? Well, I'm glad you asked. And here are a few of them I want to tell you about. A few that I thought these were the first that came to mind. And I don't even know if they're most memorable. They may or may not. I think they're important, but they may or may not be the most important. When you're at a place, especially a place like KPFA, that is involved in Pacifica Radio, that is involved in so many things happen. And it's hard to say what are the most important things, because I won't even remember probably some of the most important things. But here are a couple of them, and I feel like they're important. And I think the first one that comes to mind, if I was asked, what's a memorable moment for you at KPFA? And this will be a day that is memorable for all of us. So we'll share in some way this. And that was the day of September 11th, 2001. That day, the KPFA morning show was scheduled to play my first ever produced documentary radio piece. I was new to radio then. And the piece was about the Zapatistas in Mexico marching from Chiapas all through southern Mexico and through central Mexico until they reached Mexico City, the capital, where it demanded its rights and an end to exploitation of indigenous land. September 11th, 2001 was the 6-month anniversary of the day that the EZLN arrived in Mexico City's Zocalo, the seat of Mexico's government, which happened on March 11th, 2001. And so to mark the 6-month anniversary, I proposed to Lisa Rothman, who was the executive producer of the morning show at the time, why not on the 6-month anniversary I could provide this documentary for you, because Lisa is such a wonderful and open person and new ideas and new things, even from someone new like me. She said, sure, we'll air it. Not only will we air it, we'll put it at the very top of the show. And so I had all of this tape that I gathered from the march, and I worked on it for weeks, months really. And I went with Kirk Martin, who you may not know, but you definitely know his brother, Matt Martin, who used to work many years here at KPFA many years ago and then went on to KALW and has since left there, and I believe now is producing a lot of great podcasts. The great Matt Martin, somebody who influenced me greatly when I first started at KPFA, and just somebody who I admired. I mean, just this really, really kind and open man, and someone I still admire. And I went with his brother, Kirk Martin, and it was crazy following this march going along. And there, we actually ran into some other KPFA folks that we ended up traveling with. Gavilan Molina, Miguel Molina, Gavilan of La Onda, along with a couple of other folks from La Onda, Cesar and El Gato. It is wild to run into Gavilan, who is this legendary KPFA figure who has a much deeper voice than I have. Because we didn't plan to meet up there. We just happened to meet up in the street. And Gavilan is this sort of really strong, Chicano, proud poet, activist, and sort of senior statesman. And if you also know Gavilan, he's also almost like he has a little bit of a professional wrestler in him too. he can get worked up into an intensity, not that's off-putting, but that's just dramatic. And it was really incredible to run into him, and again Cesar and Gato from La Onda, which is this really important historic radio program that's heard on Friday nights at KPFA. So many friends have gone through that radio station or that radio program and are still with that radio program now. So it's just this wild, and here we are following the Zapatistas all through Mexico until we got through Mexico City. And again, I took all this tape and I was going to turn it into a documentary. And I worked on it again for months. And I remember being at the radio station on the night of September 10th, 2001, putting the final touches on my documentary. And the late and also wonderful, I'm going to be calling a lot of people wonderful this hour, and I actually mean it. And the late and wonderful Kelia Ramirez was there with me in the newsroom, and she did a final listen to the documentary with me. And when the 22-minute piece documentary was over, she looked at me and she said, "It was genius." She, again, is just wonderful and always supportive, if not always easy, but always supportive. And I believed her at the time when she said it, because I actually thought it was too. Now, whenever I go back to listen to something that I did a long time ago that I thought was great at the time, I'm always usually quite embarrassed by how great it is not. And I actually feel that way about that documentary. But at the time, on September 10th, 2001, I thought it was. And I'll always remember going late at night to the Berkeley BART station to go home to Oakland, and coming down in the Berkeley BART station's elevator to the platform where the trains come. I still see it vividly in my mind. The elevator doors opening, and I roll out. I remember thinking to myself, tomorrow, my life is going to change. So I went home and I set my alarm for 7:08 in the morning because I wanted to wake up right at the time that the documentary came on. So I go to sleep. The alarm goes off, but it's not my documentary. Instead, it's the great Larry Bensky talking. And right at that moment, my telephone starts to ring. This is before there are cell phones. I guess there are cell phones, but not everyone had one. I didn't have one yet, so I had to actually get out of bed to go grab the phone. And I'm not really thinking straight and understand what's going on. I literally just woke up, and I'm assuming that this phone call is from somebody congratulating me about the documentary. So I pick up the phone, I'm like, hello. And then there's this voice on the other end screaming at me, "We've been hit! We've been hit! I'm not going into work today because I'm going to die right here at home with my kids." And I was like, my God, who is this? Well, it was my coworker from the World Institute on Disability, which was my paying job at the time because I was just a volunteer at KPFA. And I don't mean just as a negative thing. I was a volunteer at KPFA then. And she tells me, "Turn on your TV." And so I turn on my TV, and there's the smoldering single World Trade Center tower. The other tower had already collapsed. And I remember vividly next talking to my mom on the phone while I was just staring at the television when I saw the second tower collapse in real time. It was kind of eerie because I'm looking at the TV, but I'm also looking at my window because I was near, I was really within, and had a good view of some of the skyline of downtown Oakland. And like everyone at the time, we were all wondering, where else is this going to happen? Is it going to happen right here, right now? And at that moment, I had a decision to make. Do I go into work, my paying job, or do I go to KPFA to help out and cover, help everyone out to cover everything that's going on? And it will be no surprise, of course, that I made the decision to go to KPFA. And when I got to the newsroom, Mark Miracle was there, Eileen Alfaderi was there, and so was the great Chris Bruni. Chris Bruni was such a consummate broadcast professional, so good on air, and just a sweet, sweet man. He was older than me, but died young, and now I'm older than he ever was. But I always admired Chris Bruni. And Mark Miracle, Eileen Alfanderi, and Chris Bruni, they're all running around like chickens without their heads, trying to figure out what in the world is going on. And I just arrive and I say, what can I do to help? And Mark Miracle gave me the assignment to cover the probable backlash against Muslims and other people in our community who may be vulnerable from people's anger over these attacks. It wasn't to cover why us. It wasn't even to dive into the lament that is normal to feel in such a moment. But we knew that there would be backlash against Muslims and against others who might be perceived as different. So Mark Miracle said, I want you to call a number of Bay Area Islamic centers and Sikh centers and just check in with people and see how they are. And I did. And I can't forget calling an Islamic center in San Jose and talking to somebody from there. They had already had their windows broken. And then he asked me, and I didn't realize you could do this at the time. He asked me, would you like me to play for you the voicemails that we've received? I can. And he did. And it was the most terrible, horrible, hardest thing to listen to. So full of hatred and venom. And I recorded them, and we immediately put them on air to make sure people knew, because we know who our listeners were. We knew they cared. To make sure people knew that there are folks in our community that are going to need our support and backing. And it was at that moment that Mark Miracle, who trained me as a broadcaster, gave me that assignment that I knew this is the place I want to be. This is where I want to be. this is what I believe in too, and this is what I want to believe in too, and I hope if I'm ever in that position one day, I would do the same thing. So I'm eternally grateful to Mark Miracle, who retired not too long ago from the evening news, hosting the evening news. His voice was such a trademark of this radio station. But I am grateful to Mark Miracle for that and for training me. Thank you, Mark. Another memory that comes to mind was the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and I was working as a reporter for KPFA then, and I got assigned to cover the protest that shut down San Francisco for like 4 days when the invasion began. It was wild. Activists and protesters literally shut down downtown San Francisco for days. The motto at the time was, "No business as usual." And I have many memories of that, many that I have said on these airwaves before. But one of my favorites was when I was covering some Black Bloc inspired folks who were tearing up a city street in the financial district. This is a time you'll remember when people were really angry at mainstream media for allowing the public to be lied into a war, into an invasion. This is a time when some protesters were actually taking a pie and throwing them into the face of journalists, especially television journalists. Again, people were really angry at the mainstream media at this time. And at this time, it was sort of the height of KPFA and Pacifica Radio's popularity, at least in my time. It was wild, the number of people that came over during this period of time. We'd have a fund drive and raise $1 million in a week. It was crazy. We used to have a light box that would correspond with the phones in the phone room. And every time a phone would ring and somebody pick it up, a light would go off. And you would see, or the light would go on. And that light box would just be full for the entire hour in which you were asking people for support. It was incredible. It was incredible. But yeah, there's this really intense anger towards mainstream media. And I'm trying to follow these Black Bloc protesters that are, again, tearing up a street in San Francisco's financial district. And they come to a hill, because San Francisco is quite hilly, and they start to go up the hill. And because I pushed a wheelchair at the time, I couldn't keep up with them, and I wasn't going to be able to do it. And they saw that. And they turned around and they grabbed me and they pushed me up the hill with them so that I could continue covering what was going on. I even remember the guy specifically who was pushing me right behind, and I just had my microphone up to him, interviewing him while this was happening as we're going up the hill, asking him questions. It was a wild scene, and it's the kind of thing that I don't think would have happened to anyone unless they were representing KPFA. They didn't know who I was. It wasn't about me. It was about KPFA and how KPFA has always been a little bit different. You know, a lot of radio stations right now are in their fund drives or have just wrapped up their fund drives. My home radio station has wrapped up its fund drive. It came up short of its goal. But you could donate to whatever your radio station is, because we broadcast on multiple radio stations across the country. You can still make a donation just by going to your radio station's website and leave what you can. There are personal moments at KPFA, of course, because it's a real place I spent a lot of time. So many memories of my colleagues. One of the funny ones, like there's so many moments, and I don't know why this one stands out to me, but it does, and it still makes me laugh. And it involves the great and legendary Chris Welch, who Berkeley even has a day of the year dedicated to her. She is the senior statesperson of the radio station. I always love her presence on the air. And I remember one day, this didn't happen on the air. This just happened in the hallway. I remember one day waiting by the elevator to go down. And she approaches to go into the bathroom that's right next to the elevator. And she's carrying her computer keyboard with her. And she goes into the bathroom. And she doesn't close the door because she doesn't need to. But what she does do is she places the keyboard in the bathroom sink and then turns on the water and starts to thoroughly rinse the keyboard, the computer keyboard. And I was like, what are you doing? And she said, my keyboard is filthy and I'm cleaning it. And I was like, that's not how you do it. As you can see, as you can hear, it still makes me laugh today. And I don't know, maybe you can put a keyboard underneath the faucet and run the water. I mean, I know if you accidentally, which I have, wash your phone, the key is not to turn it on immediately after. Let it completely dry out, and there's a chance it will survive. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about taking your computer keyboard and putting it in the sink and running water through it to clean it. But I might be wrong on it. But I don't think I am. I don't think I am. I always enjoyed visiting Chris Welch in her office because she also shared it with Philip Muldery. They were like the old married couple of the station, even though they aren't married, but they've been good friends for a long time. And they're both two of the kindest people I know. Kind of like going to that nice couple on the block that you could just go up to their house and visit them. That's what it was like going to their office. Chris Welch is so interesting because she is on air. The persona that she gives you on air is exactly how she is off air. Like there's no separation. And that on air Chris Welch that you get that is warm and eloquent and smart and funny is that same person that you get off air. And Philip Muldery, who loves nothing more than his routine. I don't know if he knows this now or not, but it's kind of a joke around the station, Philip Muldery and his routine. And he won't care because that's how much he loves his routine. But he's also like wildly fun to be around. He just says these little crazy things all the time, and it's hilarious. And he'd probably want me to tell you he has the most online listened to show on Sunday mornings because he's reminding me all the time. And he's also one of the more gentle and kind men I have ever known, and someone I want to be like. I could go on and on about the people I've worked with. I will always believe Eileen Alfandary is the greatest broadcaster that I have ever known. And there are many. When Eileen said something, I believed it. She really influenced how I think. You know, she would, like everyone, make mistakes here and there, but when she did, she always corrected it. She taught me I didn't have to skew the facts or mislead people in order to make a larger point. In fact, if you start misleading people or skew the facts or just don't have a sense of intellectual honesty, people start to distrust you. The producer of this program, Deanna Martinez, is the salt of the earth. She's been involved with this program from the very beginning. Everyone who knows her loves her, and she was our secret weapon to get people to come onto the show or even onto these airwaves for special broadcasts. They didn't come because of me, they came because they really liked her. And she never gets the credit that she deserves. It never seemed important to her. She never exhibited the ambition to get credit. Of course, she likes to be acknowledged because we all like to be acknowledged, but she didn't do the work here to have a bunch of people write her notes at the end of the program saying how sad they were that that the show was coming to an end like I did. But the truth is, she deserved them. She has been a driving force of this program. And you probably only know of her if you don't know her personally, or if you're not around the station. If you're around the station, you definitely know her because everybody does. But if you only, but likely, if your connection to this station is through the airwaves, you only know her because I mention her in the credits at the end of each show. But the truth is, she's in the show at the beginning, in the middle, in the end. All of it. All of it. And I will eternally be thankful to her. There are just a number of people who have worked on this program over the years, and I won't be able to name them all. But a prominent name is Laura Privis, who is now my home radio station's development director. She produced this program for a number of years, and she has always been someone that I have relied heavily on. The truth is, she is the one who has kept this station together for so long. She is the one that runs our fund drives, and she's the one that freaks out when we don't make our goal, which oftentimes we don't, and we still haven't, like this last one. But again, you can still make that donation, help us get there. Just go to your radio station's website. Donate what you can. But like Deanna, Laura Privis is also not one who seeks the limelight or the praise. And like Deanna, Laura is as deserving as is anyone. The most difficult job, without question, here at this radio station is managing the radio station itself. I have no desire of ever doing it. It hardly pays any more than I already make, and it is basically trying to put one fire out after another. And we are a rowdy group, a diverse, eclectic group that likes to kick the hornet's nest. And the manager has to deal with all of it. It's hard, but it's necessary, and we need one. I'm very thankful to my old friend Antonio Ortiz. Can't believe I'm messing up his name here at the end. Antonio Ortiz for stepping in that position and doing it. Antonio is a very kind man. He's in a tough job and sometimes requires difficult decisions. And when difficult decisions are made, there's always opposition to it. It's the nature of things. But I know he tries to do it the best he can and tries to do what he thinks is right. And I admire him for that. It's not an easy job, but it's an important one. I'm leaving out a lot of names that are deserving to be here, including people from the past who have produced this show, like Elizabeth Prohl. She has moved on to do new and much better things. She is successful, and I know she will continue to be so. She's so smart and came up with so many really great ideas. I realize I didn't value it as I should have at the time. Sometimes I get stressed out at the job and things aren't going the way they should or the way I wish they would. And Deanna and Laura has experienced this as well. And I can get cranky and grumpy and just off-putting. And they've all had to put up with that. And they all did, with a lot of grace and a lot of dignity. And I am thankful to them. And of course, I'm thankful to you too. I have to be thankful to you because without you, this would have never happened. Your years of support, your emails, your donations, your recommendations, running into you in the community, coming to an events, whatever it is. I always felt supported by our audience. And that was amazing. I am privileged. I'm so lucky. So lucky. I'm lucky right now that I even get to be able to express all of that. Privileged is the correct word for better and for worse. Privilege can be a curse. Well, friends, I had a lot more to say, but we're out of time. I do want to remind you that we can stay in touch. There are so many names I wanted to name and couldn't. And I regret that. I regret that. I do want to stay in touch. Again, you can email me. You can find me on social media. I do have a podcast now because that's what people do. It's called Letters from Mitch. It's exactly what it is. A letter from me to you. And then there's also a Substack page. Just look for Mitch Jeserich on Substack. Spell the name again. Jeserich. I want to thank Rod Akil, who is our engineer today. Rod Akil has been engineering this show for many years, as has Kirsten Thomas, my beloved Kirsten Thomas, as has many other folks. Again, it would be impossible to be able to mention and thank everyone who has had such a big impact on me. And if I didn't name you and you're listening, let's go get a drink or have a meal or something. And that does it for Letters and Politics. Rod Akil is the engineer today. Deanna Martinez is the producer. And I'm Mitch Jeserich, saying goodbye.
Missed your morning upfront? No worries. Starting October 20th, you can tune in again at 10 a.m., Monday through Thursday. At 10 a.m., Upfront follows 10 minutes of news headlines, then dives deep into the stories that matter. Because some conversations deserve an encore. Upfront delivers the news, context, and clarity your brain craves. Now twice a day on KPFA 94.1 FM. That's double the Brian Edwards Teaker, double the brain torque twist. Try saying that 3 times fast. For breaking news, deep dives, and sharper mornings, it's Upfront, now replaying at 10 a.m. on KPFA 94.1 FM and kpfa.org. You are listening to 94.1 KPFA, 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, and online everywhere at kpfa.org